We'll be starting in just a second. People are just pulling in like crazy, so move to the middle of the aisles.
You want? I could never get the thing. Yeah. Yeah. You can get it on my belt. Yeah, just on the belt. The clip is so tight. You should be able to do it. Yeah.
Well, the clip, so what's going on is this is separating?
It's just so tight he can't get over the belt.
Watch your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think you're on.
Okay.
Okay, so you can test
Yeah.
it.
Mm, oh yeah, it's working.
That's what I do for a living. So. Oh, yeah. That's right. You know this.
Yeah, I have to wear it till the for 6 weeks. Yeah. Okay, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to Kadampa Center. My name is Robbie Watkins, and I'll be leading this module of Discovering Buddhism. Mind and its potential, mind and its nature. There are several different names for it. We'll go with mind and its potential. And we'll be together for tonight and the next 5 weeks from 7 to 8:30 on Monday nights. And normally we will start on time, but I know some people are new here tonight and the parking situation can be a little bit complicated. But you can always go back the office building back this way, all the way 360 degrees around it. There's parking spaces back there. So now that you're familiar with the layout, we'll be starting at 7 o'clock promptly and ending on time promptly at 8:30. So let me see, who is here at Kadampa Center for the very first time tonight? Okay. And who has been coming to Kadampa Center but has never done Discovering Buddhism before? Okay, good. And how many people are repeating Discovering Buddhism? Quite a few, okay. And how many people have done this particular module with me leading it before? Okay. I was looking at my notes, it's been 2 years and 3 or 4 months since we did this the last time, because it's a 2-year series, so it's been a while since I've done this, but this is a good one. And so now I'm going to turn the floor over to a replacement for Aaron Sloan, who we will miss terribly. But we now have Linda Sa, who is going to be the course coordinator for Discovering Buddhism in this 2-year series of classes.
Thank you, Robbie. So yes, my name is Linda Sa. Thank you. Yay! I am really excited to be here and start this 2-year series with all of you. This is such an amazing time and such an amazing opportunity to start this Discovering Buddhism cycle. So I am the program assistant, so I'm here to help and answer questions and do whatever I can, so just let me know. There is a handout for those of you, I think most of you picked it up. I know we ran out of copies, but we have more now. So feel free to grab that. You don't need it for class, so you can wait till the end and pick it up on your way out if you want to. But I did want to go over what this handout says, okay? Just, it can be a little confusing because this is a 14-module 2-year program called Discovering Buddhism, and we're running it here at the Kadampa Center, and then the FPMT, which is the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, of which Kadampa Center is under, also has a Discovering Buddhism course. So you can work towards earning a certificate of completion through the FPMT, but that does require a bit more, okay? If you want to, so there's several ways you can do it. You can simply come and get whatever you want out of it and participate as much as you want. You can come and work towards a Kadampa Center completion certificate. And on the 3rd level, you can work towards the FPMT certificate. So on this paper, it kind of describes the Kadampa Center completion certificate as well as the FPMT, which does, again, it requires more, and you do need to go online. So again, if you have questions about that as we go through class or through the course, just feel free to ask me, and I'll help you find that information and try to get those questions answered for you. But again, it's kind of outlined on here, and it does describe where to find that information. So just a few logistics. Restrooms are kind of behind us on this back wall. Feel free to come and go as you need to. The course is an hour and a half long each session. As Robbie mentioned, we will be meeting for 6 Mondays for Mind and Its Potential, and then we have a couple-week break, and then we'll start the next module after that. And let's see, there are refreshments out there as well. Feel free to help yourself to those. It's by donation, so I think there's suggested donation on the little paper out there that you can just put it into a little box. And am I forgetting anything that I need to do before I turn it over to you? Oh yeah, my email is on here, and it's at the very bottom of the page. It says contact info. So you can email me with questions. It's program.db@kadampacenter.org. Or you can catch me before or after class. So just let me know. And I think that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Jill now. She has a couple things to say before we get started.
Song and dance for the next person. So I represent as like the Kadampa Center side, like the building, the facility. I'm the manager here, so if you have any questions of anything, I'm just popping in at the first. Usually you'll see me at the first module, the first class of every module, just to say hi and welcome new people. Mention a few things, like for example, the doors are open Tuesday through Friday, which is kind of rare for any community nowadays, that you can come in and meditate. So a lot of people like to do that. And you can always come in and shop in the bookstore. I'll be here until we have a new, maybe volunteer to do bookstore help before and after the class if you have materials you'd like or presents or things you want to get. So you can always call ahead too if you want to come in case I'm running an errand or at lunch. But feel free to come in and use the facility. You can use the library and use the resources and just enjoy the facility. So you might have heard, the people that have been here a while have heard this many times, but for new people it's kind of unusual that we offer everything. We make the Dharma completely available to you. It doesn't mean that the building doesn't have costs, that we don't have expenses. It means we want to make it available to you. So to make that happen, we always make it known that donations are readily and easily accepted. We have many methods. There's a little sign on the back about text giving. I notice a lot of people from classes like to do that because it's easy. You just pick Dharma class and whatever. You can even sign up. Someone actually signed up to give monthly, which is the first time for DB. So that's cool. You can go on to our community. You can see on our website, cash, checks, any way that's comfortable for you. There's boxes around that you can do that. You can ask any of these people who've been here before. Another thing someone asked me to mention that's just fun is that Heather and I do a lot of the social stuff here, so we thought we would just throw out there that every Saturday night, this could get intense because there's so many people here tonight, but we're just going to go ahead and say it. Dinner's at 6. It's a new thing we're doing at Aladdin's in North Hills, and so I'll be hosting with my co-hosts right there this Saturday. So every single Saturday night we'll be there, and if you just want to come and chat with us, it's not a Dharma class. It's just to have fun and get to know each other. The secret tagline, I say, we get together because we like each other. So we just like to hang out together. So welcome. If you're here for the first time, we just want you to feel really welcome, and hopefully this facility and this building and these people can all become part of your family and your comfort zone. And now, Mr. Watkins.
Okay, thank you, Jill.
Dr. Watkins, it's up to you.
Yeah, so we're going to start this module, and we plan on starting all the modules with a short video that was produced by the FPMT, our parent organization. So Brian, take it away. Okay. Okay, you want to get the light?
Fortunate age. Maybe you think I mean the modern age. Actually, I mean Buddhism has taken root in the West. Until recently, qualified teachers of Mahayana Buddhism outside of Asia have been few and far between. We've had to travel to the Far East to find deep teachings on the subjects of compassion, emptiness, karma, and enlightenment. Today, it's an amazing gift that we can learn about the ancient teachings of the Buddha through this 13-part video series. You will receive teachings from some of the greatest teachers, Tibetan and Western, men and women, living in the world today. You will hear personal interviews with Buddhist practitioners who share their experiences of putting the teachings into practice. You will have the opportunity to gain some understanding of Buddhism and learn skills that you can use to make your life most meaningful. Despite our achievements with science and technology, we still don't know much about the mind and its potential. Yet in fact, 2,500 years ago, Shakyamuni Buddha realized the full potential of the mind. He understood that the mind is not just the brain. The mind is beginningless, and it creates our experiences of the world. Because what we perceive as reality is a function of the mind, not only do we have the power to completely eliminate disturbing emotions like anger, highest evolutionary state possible. Look at it. Every living being has the potential to reach this limitless state of wisdom and compassion. Buddhism teaches us that as we begin to understand the true nature of our mind, we become happier, more peaceful, better able to deal with problems, which makes us better able to help others.
In this 13-part series of Discovering Buddhism videos, you are about to embark on the study of Mahayana Buddhism. Now, in the practice of Mahayana Buddhism, the concept of motivation is extremely important. For example, if someone were to give you a gift with an ulterior motive, say to receive something in return, then that wouldn't feel like such a positive action. But if someone gives you a gift just for the sheer pleasure of seeing the happiness on your face when you receive it, that feels like a very positive thing to do. In the same way, in our spiritual practice, motivation, the reason that we do an action, is just as important as the action that we do. Therefore, at the beginning of each of these teachings in this series, we are going to generate a positive motivation, a Mahayana motivation, that focuses not so much on our own well-being, but instead emphasizes generating the wish to be able to benefit other living beings and bring them happiness as much as possible. In Mind and Its Potential, the first in this series, we're going to explore the limitless potential of our own minds to bring happiness both to ourselves as well as to other living beings. And so for this reason, again, our motivation as we listen to these teachings is very important. So let's just take a moment right now to generate in our minds a strong thought. The thought wishing to be able to use these teachings in order to be able not only to bring happiness to ourselves, but also to be able to bring happiness and well-being to the others around us.
She'll be at Kadampa Center this summer teaching.
Okay, mind. Generally speaking, in Buddhism, you could say it's synonymous with the word consciousness. Number one. Number two, this mind of ours, in Buddhist terms, there's not one atom of physicality about it. It's not physical. It's interesting. In the Christian view, we talk about this sort of this part we call the soul that isn't physical, isn't it? Then we have the materialist view, which is there is simply the brain, simply the DNA, the genes, that's it. So there's two views. Well, Buddhism is neither of these. Buddhism has the view that all of the mind, all of the mind, and what that word refers to is the entire spectrum of our inner experiences, intellect, thoughts, concepts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, spirit, whatever you want to call it, instinct, intuition, you name it. All of this is encompassed by the term mind in Buddhism, or consciousness, okay? The other point about this mind of ours, or about any part of our mind, which is where again radically differs from all other religious views, is there's not one atom of our being that's created by a superior being, God, Buddha, whatever you like. Nothing. Not possible. Buddha says it's just not on. It's just his view, From his own experience has discovered this to be the truth. And the other interesting point, which is where it differs radically again from all Western psychological views, is there's not one atom of our mind, our personality, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, that's created by mum and dad. I mean, big surprise. We have to stop blaming them, okay? There's no part of our mind that comes from our mother and father. Clearly the body does. Thank you, mother and father. They provide us with egg and to in this universe has a continuity. You know, this thing here comes from metal and plastic and goes back and back. This cup, the same. The flowers, everything has a continuity. Suddenly, there's one moment nothing, and then one moment a flower. We all know that's absurd. So clearly, with the mind, it's not possible. Same thing. So mind or consciousness, not physical. Comes from a previous moment to itself, like a mental continuum, they call it. You know. This whole idea of mind being beginningless. Because if you follow this concept through now, this lot, intellectually, conceptually, you can't find any conclusion other than the fact that the mind has to be beginningless. Because this process of cause and effect, you know, chicken and egg. How can you have a first chicken? Okay, Christians and Muslims and all most religions point to God as the source. Where do I come from? From God. Buddha says no. You come from previous moments of your own consciousness. So if you trace it back and you think, well, maybe it began 32 years ago. Maybe it began 52 lives ago. In any given moment you say maybe it began then, you have to say there was a moment of mind existing. So if it existed then, it has to have come from a previous moment, doesn't it? Conclusion, your consciousness is beginningless. This is the first idea. Okay. The other point that's so crucial is this idea of Buddha nature. What does this mean? Because the big question, we all have these questions. We say, who am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Okay, Buddha says the answer to those questions is to be a Buddha. What's Buddha? Buddha is Sanskrit. It means fully awake. And actually, all it's referring to, you know, is the fully developed consciousness, mind, beyond which it can't be developed further. What Buddha means is a mind, a being, a consciousness that's fully developed in all, simply speaking, in all what we call the positive qualities, and absolutely free of the negative one. So simple. There's a simple way of saying. And what Buddha is saying is that is who we really are. We all possess, the term they use is we all possess Buddha nature. Well, the simple way of saying this is this, you know. It's like, let's use the analogy of an acorn. Mummy, what's that, you know? Oh, darling, that's an acorn. What's an acorn, Mummy? Well, that, you know, then she points to the oak tree. She says, that will become that. Oh, how interesting, isn't it? So then when you might say, what's the nature of an acorn? You might just say, what is it? When you see an acorn, what you're really seeing is a potential oak tree, isn't it? You're not some, you know, it's a cute little brown thing. Sure, you can use it for this and that. You can use it for jewelry. You can use it as a weapon if you like. But kind of how dumb. What it really is that you see what its true nature is. We don't use those words, but you listen to it. What it really is a potential oak tree. So how foolish not to develop into an oak tree? How ridiculous, isn't it? Well, that's what Buddha's saying. Mind, consciousness, which is indestructible, which is not created, its true nature, what it really is a potential Buddha, a fully developed mind. It's not as if we have a choice about it, we have an option. It's not as if some people like Mother Teresa are born to be Buddhas, you know, from a potluck. Not like that. No, by definition, an acorn is something that if you give it all the appropriate conditions, will become an oak tree. It's not as if you can turn it into an apple tree if you want to. How stupid. So this is the attitude we have to slowly develop about ourselves. What's kind of interesting now is because we don't really know who we really are, we identify with this little kind of brown, undeveloped thing. Well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm lazy, I'm fat, I'm human, I'm female, I'm no good, I'm special, I'm delicious, I'm ugly, I'm beautiful, you name it. We're kind of defining ourselves by this little brown thing. How boring, how stupid, how short, tunnel vision, you know. Now, Buddha, which is your true nature, which is what your oak tree is, when you're fully developed, you'll have fully developed two wings. Infinite empathy with all living beings, beyond which, you know, totally developed, beyond which you can't develop it further. And this empathy would be such that as if they were all you. There's no separation. Huge empathy, huge wish, spontaneous wish to benefit each one perfectly. Second, you have fully developed wisdom wing, which literally in Buddhist terms is called omniscience. And my mum thought this was very arrogant. Only God is omniscient. The Buddha says every living being, if you possess mind, your mind has the potential to know everything. So this is just something totally natural, Buddha says. That our mind has the capacity to literally know everything. And when we have fully removed all the pollution from the mind, all the delusions, then our mind will be in sync with reality, quite literally. Buddha says we're way out of sync with reality right now because of all the pollution in the mind. So we fully develop will be omniscient. Omniscient, infinite compassion, and the Let's call literally, if you like, omnipotence. The effortless power to do whatever needs to be done to benefit each one of these countless living beings in the entire universe, to benefit them perfectly based on the wisdom that sees their minds perfectly and knows precisely what to do and how to do it. And that would include, in fact, the capacity to manifest your own mind, your Buddha mind, in millions of forms throughout millions of universes for millions of eons as long as suffering sentient beings exist. That's a Buddha, okay? That's enlightenment. Enlightenment isn't just some kind of nice feeling, okay? So a little bit more than that. This is enlightenment. And Buddha says that's your true nature. That's who you have become. That simply is naturally who you really are. You're not it yet. But this whole idea of once you really appreciate what an acorn really is, you will treat it with such respect. And this is the attitude we have to develop about ourselves. It's hugely inspiring, actually, which is why it's so important to hear this very first.
So anyway, whatever our reason, we meet the Buddha Dharma, and in meeting the Buddha Dharma, we start to discover more and more that the source of our suffering comes from our mind. There are external conditions for our suffering. Definitely, there are many, many external conditions for our suffering to arise. But the root cause of our suffering, the Buddha taught, lies within our own mind. And in fact, even meeting the external conditions is something to do with our mind. So the more we understand that our own mind is the source of our suffering, and also, fortunately, our own mind is the source of our happiness, then we begin to understand that the only way to be free of suffering is to change our mind, and to change it radically. If we change it a little bit, we will overcome a little bit of suffering. But if we radically change our mind, bring about a real revolution in our mind, and eliminate the disturbing thoughts from our mind, and develop all the positive qualities of our mind, then we can be completely free of suffering and develop real happiness. Because again, the happiness that we're seeking is not something temporary, superficial. We may not never have thought about what happiness we're seeking, but if we check up, we want a happiness that is perfect and lasting. Buddhism says that there is this amazing phenomenon called mind, which is not the brain. It is not something physical. It is something formless, not having any qualities of physical matter. The mind is something which is clear, formless, and has the ability to know. In fact, mind is the only thing that knows, experiences, and feels. Mind's job is to know. In every way, the word know, we can analyze this word and discover that there are many ways to know. Right now, we ourselves know in quite indirect and superficial ways, mostly through concepts, mostly through reading, being told things by others. So right now, we are knowing in a very limited way. This is because our mind is being prevented from knowing perfectly, completely, by the disturbing thoughts that all of us have. So we can imagine what it would be like distractions, and all this confusion in the mind, then the mind could just know. But is it possible to get rid of these disturbing thoughts? So this is also a very big question. This is what the whole Buddha Dharma is about. But also, maybe we can get some feeling that it is possible, because also, when we meditate, or try to meditate, if by placing our mind on an object, such as the breath, although we're not able to keep our mind on the breath for a long time, perfectly, totally experience 100% breath, become union oneness with the breath, still, by putting some effort in doing that, what happens? We all experience, if we try and do it for some time, that our disturbing thoughts, the agitation in our mind, does reduce. Yes. Hopefully we've all had that experience at least one time, and at least for a short time, that the disturbing thoughts, they don't go away completely, but at least they decline. This is actually an indication that these disturbing thoughts have no power from their own side to control the mind. And that, my great demonstration. Normally, this is center directors don't like this demonstration because I destroy them. But normally, our mind is like that. That is our mind, completely shaken, disturbed. But if I stop shaking this water, which will make the director very happy, then what happens? The water returns to its natural state. It isn't natural for water to be agitated. Something else is doing that. And when you stop the agitation, the water just naturally, without any other factors involved, goes back to its natural state. It returns to being level, still, and then it also has the ability, when it's calm and clear, it has the ability to reflect things. When it's completely agitated, the surface of the water has no ability to reflect things accurately. We can also notice that when we do even a little simple breathing and meditation, our mind starts to become calmer and clearer, more still, because that's its natural state. We've never experienced this natural state, but that is its natural state, and it always has the tendency to return to it. Think about it.
Understanding the true nature of the mind has helped me gradually over a period of, I'd say, about 3 years of just sort of letting that filter down. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happened very gradually. Let's say I wake up, recently and think, wow, I'm a different person. I have more self-confidence. And because you start to realize that you're not this limited, hopeless, helpless being who's under the influence of all these things outside and all these things inside that cause so much suffering. When people come up to me and ask me about being a Buddhist nun, about Buddhism, many people have this, they've already decided that Buddhism is this dark, gloomy, pessimistic, nihilistic religion that talks about suffering and death. talk about suffering and death a lot, but we talk about it in a way where we're looking at the situation that we're in. And this is really the situation we're in. We're suffering and we have to die. And but there's a solution to it. That's what everybody seems to forget, that part. There's a solution, and the solution is that we have this pure potential of our mind that's unbelievable, that we can become these incredible beings, these Buddhas, what they call Buddhas. You can call it whatever you want, but it's this potential to become beyond whatever your imagination can come up with, a powerful, all-knowing, blissful being who can help everyone. I always wanted to help people. Since I was a little girl, I recognized that people were suffering. My parents were suffering, my grandparents, everyone. I recognized their suffering. I recognized my own suffering. But as I grew up and became an adult, my own suffering overwhelmed me so much that I didn't feel like I could help other people. I couldn't even help myself. And gradually, through this understanding and some little bit of taste experience, that I do have this incredible nature. More and more, I seem to be helping more and more people, and thinking less and less about my own suffering.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. He's kind of good at that, isn't he? He may have a future in public speaking or acting or something like that. Okay, since we have a lot of new people here tonight, I'm going to do some very introductory material about Kadampa Center and Buddhism in general that many of you are probably more than familiar with, so you can tune out on this part if you're so inclined. On the other hand, if you understand everything that was in that video, you can skip the next 5 classes, because that was the whole class in 30 minutes there. Again, my name's Robbie Watkins, and I've been a member of Kadampa Center since 1993. I've been studying Tibetan Buddhism since 1980, and have developed some personal insights into it. I'm not a qualified teacher along the lines of Venerable Rabina, who you saw in the film, or Geshe Gelik, our resident teacher, but I am one of the people who leads these classes. I was part of a group that met in 1996, I think, at Institute Lama Tsongkhapa, which is an FPMT center in outside Pisa, Italy. It's beautiful. It's in a Renaissance castle, and you wake up in the morning and you throw your shutters open and you look across the olive trees down at the Mediterranean. So if you ever want to go to a nice Buddhist retreat center, Institute Lama Tsongkhapa is the place to go, is given by a very generous student to the FPMT. But we designed this course then, came up with the 14 modules, and it's been taught and refined around the world since then. So that's my qualification for sitting up here. So we're studying, these modules are to introduce you to the basics of Tibetan Buddhism as practiced in our tradition. Buddhism is some people even wonder if it is a religion or not, okay? It's completely non-theistic. There is no God of any way, shape, or form in Buddhism. And I'm not a scholar of religions, but my understanding is there may be one or two other religions, Jainism and something else, that are non-theistic. But I've also been told that Buddhism is distinguished from those in that in Buddhism, and you heard Venerable Robina touch on it, there's also no soul, where the other religions may posit no God, but they posit the concept of a soul. And in Buddhism, there is no concept of a soul. There is this nature of Buddha nature, which we'll talk about later in the class. But Buddhism is based on the teachings of the Buddha, who was a historical figure who lived approximately 2,500 years ago. He lived in northern India, in the area, northern India, Nepal border. We had a group of people who recently went on pilgrimage there. Sandy went, and who else went? Anybody else in here? We had a group go, and it's a wonderful trip if you ever get the chance. But he lived 2,500 years ago. He was an ordinary human being, and most people are familiar with the life story of the Buddha. I'm not going to go into that. He was not a god. He was not someone who came down from heaven or anything like that. He was an ordinary human being who completely developed his mind. And as Venerable Robina mentioned, he particularly developed two qualities in his mind: compassion and wisdom. So by doing so, he became a Buddha. He achieved the state of Buddhahood. Also referred to as enlightenment, by nothing more than working with his mind. He sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, looked at his mind, observed it, began to understand it, and developed these two qualities completely. Compassion being the wish that others be free of suffering, that all beings be free of suffering. Wisdom basically being seeing reality, seeing things as they truly exist. And by developing those two qualities, he eliminated all the negative qualities from his mind and became a Buddha, the state of Buddhahood or the state of enlightenment. An ordinary human being who developed his mind. And that potential exists in each of us. Each of us is equally capable of becoming a Buddha, as are dogs, cats, animals, all other sentient beings, all other beings with mind. Okay, some of us are a little farther along the path than others, but that's a possibility for all of us. So I'm just going to give you some words that you may hear: Buddhahood, enlightenment. And then lots of times you'll hear the word nirvana, which is not the same thing as Buddhahood. A lot of times people think it is. Nirvana is kind of a way station on the Enlightenment Express. It's where you get to the point of no more personal suffering. Okay, you haven't completely developed your mind, but you have purified that part of your mind that experiences suffering. Okay, that's the state of nirvana, but it's not the same thing as becoming a Buddha or becoming enlightened. Okay, so we're studying the historical teachings of the Buddha, who lived in northern India approximately 2,500 years ago. And I'm not a great historian of Buddhism. So this is a representation of the Buddha here, kind of in idealized form. This is a statue of the Buddha. And let's see, next would be, anybody know who this is? Let's see, let me see if I can pull this. Okay, who's this? Lama Atisha. And what did he do? Anybody know what Lama Atisha did? He took Buddhism to Tibet. It had come there earlier. It had died out. Lama Atisha went from India to Tibet and brought the teachings of the Buddha to India. And anybody know when he lived? I'm thinking it's like 900 AD, but I'm not sure. Somewhere in that range. Okay, so this is Lama Atisha. I'm just explaining this because you're going to be looking at this for the next 2 years, so you might as well know who's here. But the teachings of Buddha expanded throughout all of Asia. They went to Japan, Zen Buddhism. They went to China. They went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Sri Lanka. A lot of the greatest Buddhist scholars lived in Indonesia, which is now a Muslim country, but was a very great center of Buddhist culture for a while. They existed in India, which is now mainly a Hindu and a Muslim country, though there is some Buddhism left in India. But we tend to forget that Buddhism was originally an Indian religion, and it spread out through all of Asia and took on some of the cultural trappings of each country that it went to. So Lama Atisha took it to Tibet and established there, and it, like most philosophical beliefs or religions, it got corrupted, and people were using it for power, and they were using it to oppress people, and they brought in a lot of, kind of spiritual chicanery and stuff. So the next great figure that we have up here, this is Lama Tsongkhapa. He is kind of the Martin Luther of Tibetan Buddhism. He was a great reformer, and he lived 1400. Anybody know? Again, about 1400 AD. Okay, so he was the great reformer, and he took, in addition to getting some of the corruption out that had crept in, he took the teachings of the Buddha and organized them in a way that was more accessible, both for the monks who were studying it in the monasteries and for some of the lay people. So this is Lama Atisha. These are his two main disciples. This guy who looks like he's had too much caffeine with the bug eyes, and this one, and I can never remember which one's which, but they were his two main disciples. And Lama Atisha also established what's known as the yellow hat tradition. They wore these yellow hats, which today is known as the Gelugpa tradition. There are 4 main traditions in Tibetan Buddhism. You can think of them as denominations in the Church of Tibetan Buddhism. There's Gelugpa, Nyingma, Shakya, and Kagyu. And Kadampa Center is in the Gelugpa, or yellow hat tradition. So we refer to Lama Tsongkhapa quite a lot around here. He's kind of the spiritual head of the tradition that we're part of. The Dalai Lama is the spiritual head of the Gelugpa tradition. He's always a member of the Gelugpa tradition, but traditionally he was also the head of the secular government in Tibet before it was taken over by the Chinese. And as most people know, the Dalai Lama dies, and then somehow they recognize his reincarnation, maybe close to where he died, maybe off in the wilds of Tibet, and that's the next Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama is the head of the Gelugpa tradition, traditionally head of the Tibetan government, and is generally recognized as a significant figure by all the Buddhist traditions, the Japanese, the Chinese, and so on, even though he doesn't have any official position in the other Buddhist traditions. It's not like he's the Pope of all the Buddhists. He's specifically the head of the Gelugpa tradition. The other traditions look up to him, but they have their own heads. But then he also had the political power. So there's been Dalai Lama after Dalai Lama. And this is behind Lama Atisha's head. We have a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, the current Dalai Lama, who lives in Dharamsala in northern India. The Indian government has very generously given the Tibetan government in exile resources there. So again, he's the head of the Gelugpa tradition, so here at Kadampa Center we look up to him. This picture here is Lama Yeshe. He was a monk. A lot of people think it's an old woman, but it's actually a guy. He was born in Tibet, escaped over the mountains at a young age, and he was quite an iconoclast. He had the nerve, the effrontery, to actually teach Buddhism to Westerners. He's one of the very first in the Tibetan tradition who taught Buddhism to Westerners. And he did this in Nepal at a monastery outside Kathmandu. And he founded the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. I don't know if he picked that name because it's really a mouthful. But that's a worldwide organization of centers in Western countries who are practicing Tibetan Buddhism, and Kadampa Center is a part of that organization. There are approximately 170 FPMT centers now around the world. So he founded the organization that we're part of, and he is deceased. He died in California in the late 80s. And his main student was Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is still living, who's the head of the FPMT currently. And we have the great good fortune that he comes to Kadampa Center or to North Carolina every couple of years, and he leads a retreat up in the mountains near Asheville, where we have people come from all over the world to study with him, because every center wants Lama Zopa to come to their center all the time, and he can't do that. He generally does a few main visits a year, so we're incredibly fortunate to have that strong connection with him. And the next time he'll be here will be in next year, 2020. Yeah, he'll be leading a one-month retreat at Blue Ridge Retreat Center in near Montcure. So if you're interested in Tibetan Buddhism, put that on your calendar. We don't have the exact dates yet. And then we don't have pictures of him up here, but Geshe Gelik is our resident, one of our resident teachers. He studied in the monasteries, the Tibetan monasteries that relocated in southern India, Sarajay Monastery, and our other resident teacher is Geshe Sampo. So we're incredibly fortunate to have two fully qualified Tibetan masters as resident teachers here at Kadampa Center. I mean, most FPMT centers are praying to get one teacher, and somehow we had the good karma to have two teachers who are resident here. So they teach on Sunday mornings, Wednesday evenings, and other special days. And then this I'm not going to talk about, but this is a statue of Kala Chakra, which is a meditational image. Anyway, by Tibetan standards, this altar, as we refer to it, is very plain and bare. I mean, they would say, where's all the good stuff, you know? For the Tibetans, it can't be gaudy enough or colorful enough or anything. But anyway, the point is, we don't worship these statues. The statues are not magical. Everything you see up here is to help you understand your mind. Now, right now, looking at it, you probably just see a cacophony of colors and shapes if you're new to Kadampa Center. But as you start to study Tibetan Buddhism, you'll understand what these mean and all these tankas, as they're called, that are hanging down around the walls. Those are all to help you develop your mind. Okay? Nothing more than that. Again, and these are, I'm not going to open one up, but these are text. Okay, these are the teachings of the Buddha, and they're in wood. This one's filled with hundreds of sheets. They're filled with woodblock prints. Okay, so these all here are teachings of the Buddha in Tibetan, which Geshe Gelik and Geshe Sampo can read, and sometimes they, or if we have a visiting Tibetan teacher, will take one down and use it in their teachings. There's no table of contents, there's no index. I don't know how they know which one's where, but they're organized according to some system. Okay, the original teachings of the Buddha referred to as the sutras. There are thousands of them. They're incredibly long. We almost never study the sutras, okay? We study commentaries on the sutras, commentaries on the commentaries. Trying to sit down with a sutra, unless even a very simple one like the Heart Sutra, which is only 3 pages, there's years worth of study in one sutra. So most of us are not at that level. So that's just a little bit about the altar and the organization that we're part of. We're studying Buddhism in the Tibetan tradition. Like I say, each of the, other things. Sometimes you hear the words, let's see, Theravada. These are just words you may come across if you hang out in Tibetan and Buddhist circles. And sometimes Hinayana. And then Mahayana. Just so you're familiar with those words. Okay. Theravada Buddhism is the Buddhism of Southern Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, those countries down there, where the goal, the aspiration is personal liberation, freedom from suffering. Okay. Mahayana Buddhism is typically the Buddhism of Northern Asia. I mean, this is a division like Protestant and Catholic, both Christian, but divided. So this is both Buddhism, but 2 different divisions. This is the Buddhism of Tibet, China, and Japan. Zen Buddhism is a form of Mahayana Buddhism. And in these traditions, the goal is liberation of all beings. The goal is to free all beings from suffering. But the basic teachings in the 2 traditions are identical. It's just different ways of approaching it. So just some words, not the subject matter of this module, but words that you need to be familiar with. Okay. The most important part of this module, I think all of the modules, occurs outside this room. Okay. You're going to get some basic information here, but it's really not going to be in terms of information. You could probably put all the worthwhile stuff on half a page. The important stuff is to do the readings, do the contemplation, which means thinking about what we've talked about, and then doing the meditation. Okay? How many people in here have never meditated? And don't be embarrassed to say that. Okay, we have some people who are new to it. So I'm going to give you a little introduction to meditation, because that's going to be a part of this course, this module. There's a whole module on how to meditate that will go into more detail. But in the Buddhist teachings, or in the Tibetan tradition, the word for meditation is gom. So this room is referred to as a gompa, a room for meditation. And does anybody know what the Buddhist definition of there are a lot of traditions that have meditation, meditative techniques. There are certain Christian traditions, a lot of others. But when people talk about meditation, they typically think about Buddhism. What is the Buddhist definition of meditation? To become familiar with, okay? It means your mind is becoming familiar with something. So meditation is absolutely not going blank or getting rid of all your thoughts. And actually in the Buddhist concept of the mind, that's an impossibility. You can't empty your mind of all thoughts. It can't be completely empty. But you can become familiar with different thoughts. And the Buddha said, if you want to be happy, and this is the Buddha as a human being, talking to other human beings, not a God telling us what we have to do. If you want to be happy, what I've figured out, sitting under the Bodhi tree, is that your mind should become familiar with compassion, and it should become familiar with wisdom. It should know those qualities, and that'll make you happy. Now he says, if you want to sit and meditate and become familiar with rape and murder and stealing, you can do that, but it's not going to make you happy. It's going to make you very unhappy. But if you want to be happy, which is a completely valid, non-selfish aspiration that we all have, your mind needs to become familiar, know compassion and wisdom. So everything we do here at Kadampa Center, and you may come to pujas, which are prayer services, or teachings that seem very esoteric, is about developing those qualities in our mind. The potential for them exists, and we can develop them. And that's what we do in meditation. Okay, so it's taking our mind and becoming very focused on a specific topic or a subject or an area. There's nothing mystical about it. We're just sitting and looking at our mind and working with it. So it said if we're going to have a meditation practice, which means doing meditation on a regular basis, the first thing is to find a nice location for it. So part of your homework for the week, which you'll be getting on a handout, is to find a place at home that you can meditate. And it needs to be, the ideal is someplace that's quiet, peaceful, neat. You need to have rules with your family members and your cats and your dogs, that when you're sitting on your meditation cushion, they are to respect that and leave you alone. You don't have to set up an altar or anything, but in the How to Meditate course, they'll talk about that. So find a place, this week, find a place that you can meditate. I mean, some people do it in a closet, some people do it in the bathroom, but it needs to be a designated place that you can meditate. So get that this week. You can meditate either sitting in a chair or on a cushion on the floor. There's a posture that is recommended, but is not required, but it's said that this posture kind of opens up the energy channels in the body, and that's not at all the subject of this module, but there are certain energy channels that can be blocked that interfere with meditation, but it's also a posture that is just, once you're familiar with it, is comfortable and self-maintaining, so you don't obsess about your posture for the entire meditation session. So the most important thing about the posture is that our back is a little bit straighter than we normally sit. It's not rigid, but it's said that we have a regal or king-like posture. So if you're on a cushion, your back is a little bit straight. If you're sitting in a chair, don't lean back if that's the way you're inclined to, but sit forward a little bit. Your head is straight on your shoulders, not tilted to one side or the other, maybe just a couple degrees in front of the vertical. Your eyes can either be just very slightly opened, so that just a little bit of light comes in without actually recognizing objects, or very lightly closed, but not clenched. Your jaw is loosely closed, not clenched also. You put your tongue on the gum above the upper teeth. It's, that keeps you from drooling, which is not cool when you're meditating. Your shoulders are down, not up around your ears, but down, and back a little bit, so your chest is a little bit open. Upper arms are away from the side of your body, so that some air can pass through. And you can either put your hands on your knees, or you can sit. More traditionally in the Tibetan tradition, we put the right hand on left, with our thumbs touching slightly below the navel, and that's said to represent the union of wisdom and compassion, the two qualities of the enlightened mind, or as Venerable Robbie referred to them, the two wings of the bird, compassion and wisdom. The bird can't fly without two wings. Or as Gareth Sparrowma, teacher who came here a number of years, said, to become a Buddha, you have to be nice and you have to be smart. You can't be just one or the other. You have to be nice and smart. So that's what enlightenment is, being nice and smart at the same time. And then everybody always gets hung up on their legs, what to do with them. If you're sitting in a chair, just put your feet flat on the floor. If your feet don't reach the floor comfortably, it's fine to put a cushion under your feet. If you're sitting on a cushion, sit towards the front third of the cushion so that your pelvis is tilted forward. And you can just cross your legs, or you can do what's called a cobbler or tailor position, where you have one leg in front of the other, or one foot up on top of your leg, or you can even do a full lotus. But the point is not to torture yourself, but to find a position that's just very stable, so that once you establish it, you don't have to pay attention to it. So take a moment, establish your posture, and just check for any signs of tension, starting at the top of your head and working down, and address those now so they're not a problem during the meditation. And begin by taking 3 deep breaths from the abdomen, with the abdomen expanding on the in-breath. 3 deep breaths. It actually physiologically stimulates what's called the vagus nerve and slows our heart rate and our breathing down a little bit. So you don't want to do it for too long like that, but just 3 deep breaths like that. And now allow your breathing to return to its natural pattern. And as we saw in the video, take a moment and set your motivation. And the motivation we like to set is, may sound a little bit ridiculous, but we'll talk about this more in the coming weeks, that I am doing this motivation to develop my qualities of compassion and wisdom. And that seems really grandiose and far-fetched, but we'll explore that motivation more over the coming weeks. And having set our motivation, we begin the meditation, which is a simple concentration meditation. We're just placing our awareness on the movement of the breath in and out through the openings of our nostrils. We're not thinking about it. We're not describing it to ourselves. We're not visualizing it. Just direct awareness of the physical sensation of air moving in and out. And when we notice that our mind has wandered off to some other subject about something that happened today, or something we need to do on the way home, or a itch we have somewhere on our body, we just drop that thought and come back to the breath over and over and over again, so that our mind is becoming familiar with its ability to concentrate, to pay attention. And that's the meditation. And just as we began our meditation with a motivation, we end with a dedication. We acknowledge that we've done something positive for the past few minutes. And we think, may that positive imprint not be lost, but may it rest on my mind stream, and may it develop in the future in a way that benefits all sentient beings, all beings with consciousness. Could I have a copy of the homework, Linda? Okay. There's no time for questions tonight, but I love questions, and so the next 5 classes, there'll be a lot of time for questions and discussions. There is homework, okay? When we're working on a topic in Tibetan Buddhism, it said we should meditate, study, meditate, and contemplate. So I'm going to try and set the homework up along those lines. The first part of the homework is to do the reading. How do they access the readings, Linda?
It's online and it's described on the hand.
Okay. The readings are online. It's very short, 4 to 9 pages. I'm not requiring any extra books in addition to what's online. But especially if you're going to be doing the whole series of modules, you should buy a copy of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which is for sale in our bookstore. It covers the whole Buddhist path from the Tibetan point of view, and it's a book that we reference here over and over at Kadampa Center, and we'll talk about it in all the modules. It's not light reading, but it's an excellent reference book. It's pure gold. So the first thing is to do the reading. Find and set up your meditation space at home, okay? Talk to your family members, train your animals, okay? This is your quiet time. Then I want you to meditate for 6 days this coming week. You can choose the days, 10 minutes a day on the structure that I just gave you. Establish your posture, set a motivation, pay attention to the breath, then dedication. It's fine to put a clock in front of you and refer to it, or you can set an alarm clock or whatever. But 10 minutes, that's all it takes to start off with, so that you get some experience of that. And then next week, we'll get into our discussion of the mind/consciousness. We use those 2 words interchangeably. What is the mind? Okay, and just think about that and be very specific. Is the mind the brain? Is the mind the thoughts? Is the mind the emotions? Is the mind my soul? There's no right or wrong answer. Buddhism is based on examining your personal experience. I'll give the party line ATB according to the Buddha, but your own experience is what counts and the conclusions that you come to. And next week we will start on time, since everybody knows where to park now, and we'll finish up a couple minutes early. So thank you, everyone. Anything, Linda? Yeah, homework, okay. And this is not to turn in, but if you're doing it for a Kadampa Center certificate, just keep it and check the things off as you do them, and then we'll get you a certificate at the end of the module.